Hello, my name is Chris, and today I'd like to share with you my experiences of hitting rock bottom in depression, and how by slowly but surely changing the way that I thought, the way that I felt, and yes, the way that I acted, I was able to not only find the energy to recover and the energy to build a big, beautiful, better life for myself, but also how changing the way that I thought, felt and behaved helped me to come up with a reason and a purpose for wanting to do so in the first place. When we look up, how to beat depression, how to overcome depression, we get lots of useful advice. People say things to us like, reach out and talk to somebody, go and do some exercise, try and stick to your normal routine. And I'm not discrediting any of that advice, and I'm not saying it's not useful. It definitely is, but it isn't as simple or as straightforward as just flicking the switch and going, okay, I'm lying on the couch right now because I'm so depressed I don't have the energy to do anything else, but hey, somebody's just told me to reach out to somebody, so I'm going to go and do that. Because for one thing, I don't even have the mental or the physical energy to hold a conversation with someone, let alone go for a walk. But even if I did, even if I had all the energy and all the mental clarity in the world, I wouldn't even want to, because I'm in the thick of my depression, and I just kind of think, well, what's the point? Why bother? So for me, getting out of my depression, the worst of my depression, started with answering the question, what's the point? Why bother? Then once I answered that question, I was able to find the energy to do so. Sharing this video with you today, I know I normally talk about quitting smoking and sometimes addiction and alcoholism, but I've also shared about my depression in the past, and I find that when I do, I meet other people who have had similar experiences to mine or are going through them, where smoking or addiction is kind of like the surface level symptom of the bigger underlying depression or whatever it is that they happen to be dealing with. So I thought I'd share this, and hopefully for some people at least it might just, I don't know, give you some comfort or some ideas about how you can slowly start to get off the couch or get out of bed and start to heal that depression. I will say that this video probably isn't for everyone, especially if you normally prefer my videos where I give you practical, actionable, straightforward tips that you can use. I sat down to start making some notes on this video this morning, and I was going to share with you things like go and brush your teeth and very practical things that you could do to start overcoming depression. But I ended up writing like an 8-page essay that was quite metaphysical, that was quite a bit fluffy and emotional, and may not be for everyone. So if you prefer the practical stuff, this might not be for you. If you want to stick with me through the fluffy, emotional, spiritual kind of stuff, then I'd like it. Let's hang out and let's talk about that. The Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling once famously said that rock bottom was the solid foundation upon which she built her life. And having experienced rock bottom a couple of different times in a couple of different circumstances, I can certainly see where she's coming from with that. When I hit rock bottom in my alcoholism and my heavy drinking, it took me getting to that point so that I could finally string together any kind of long-term sobriety and get the mental clarity and the confidence to start cleaning up the wreckage of my past and making better decisions about my future. Eventually I hit another rock bottom in smoking, when I would wake up every morning and cough till I threw up and spend the rest of my money on cigarettes just so I could add more poison to myself. It took me getting to that desperate rock bottom to finally quit and start taking responsibility for my own health and making better decisions about this physical body. But the hardest rock bottom of all was the rock bottom that I hit in my depression at the start of 2017. I was physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually exhausted. I would wake up every single morning and my first thought was, is today the day that I go and throw a rope around the tree outside and hang myself and just end it all? Every day that was my first thought. And it took an awful lot of strength just to make the decision that no, for whatever reason, for reasons I don't yet know, I'm not going to die today. I'm going to stay on this earth. Yet it took so much strength of me just to make that one decision that I was completely spent for the rest of the day. And I would spend, the whole of my day on the sofa just eating crap and watching crap on TV. For some reason I binged watched the sitcom Third Rock from the Sun, and I didn't even laugh at it, I just stared at it. To this day I still can't watch that show because that's what it reminds me of. But this was like the really desperate point in my life. I was self-employed and my business went under because I just couldn't bring myself to do any work, so I lost all my clients. As a result of that, I had no money left. I ended up back in debt because I was eating so much. I was not eating anything of any nutritional value. I ended up putting on 50 to 60 pounds in weight. It was just the most desperate, depressing time in my life, like quite literally the most depressing time in my life. I wasn't shaving, I wasn't showering, I wasn't brushing my teeth. This was as bad as it ever got for me, but from hitting that rock bottom, eventually I was able to rebuild. That was a solid foundation upon which I rebuilt the best version of my life yet. As a result of that depression and coming out the other side of it, I decided to change careers. I went back to school to become a counsellor so that I can help people. Like my thing is that having experienced how dark depression can be, if there's anything I can do so that people don't have that same experience, or at least have it so it doesn't suck as much, then I want to do that. So I'm at college training to do that. As a result of coming out of that depression, I started cycling and running again and got into, the best physical shape of my life. As a result of coming out of that depression, I started focusing more on this YouTube channel and reaching out and building a little community that we've got, especially on the Finding Freedom Facebook group. So all these positive things came out of that experience. But there was no flashing light, no grand epiphany, no moment where I suddenly, after weeks of lying on the sofa, leapt up and went, hurrah, I am healed, I am back, it's time to motivate. It was a slow and steady process of changing and evolving and letting go. It took big, radical action and bold decision making to get to the point in my life where I'm at today. But in the thick of my depression, when I could barely get off the sofa, I didn't have the capacity, or at least I didn't feel like I had the capacity to take radical action or make bold decisions. So I had to start with the smallest, simplest of steps. And even those were very, very hard at the time. As I say, one of the consequences of recovering from my depression is that I started running again. And last month I just finished my second marathon, the first marathon that I've done in like 7 years. It was hard, but what was even harder than running 26.2 miles last month was getting off the sofa in the thick of my depression. And again, it wasn't just that I was physically exhausted. It wasn't just that I couldn't think straight because I was so clouded in my own darkness to actually get up and do anything. It was that even if I had all the mental clarity and all the energy in the world, I didn't see the point. Life didn't feel as though it was worth living. I wasn't quite ready to die, but I wasn't ready to live either. This depression, it was like a 200-pound weight upon me. It's like if you say to someone, hey, if you're depressed, go and do some exercise. Sounds like a great idea, but saying that to someone with depression, it'd be like saying go and climb up that hill with a 200-pound weight on you. So I had to start small. And I had to start with finding a reason, with finding a purpose, with finding some way of just saying, okay, Chris, it is worth getting off the sofa and doing something about. Now I knew that because my own head was so full of cloudy darkness, was so full of chaos and despair, that trying to look inside myself for a reason or a purpose was not going to work. I knew that if I was going to find this reason, I had to look outside of myself, which kind of goes against a lot of what people tell you. You know, like I'm studying person-centered counselling at school, and we you know, the very basis of that is that we all have the answers within ourselves that we need. But I wasn't capable of looking within myself because I was so full of darkness. So I had to look outside and look at like the people and the things around me. I remember reading something about how if you aren't capable of loving yourself, as many of us aren't in the thick of our depression, we're not capable of self-love or compassion, or at least it feels as if we are not. If we are not capable of loving ourselves in that moment, then find something that we love more than ourselves. Something that we care about so deeply that it will keep us around and eventually get us back off the sofa to go and embrace or engage in that thing. It could be, you know, a passion or a hobby, but for me that wasn't working. I love music, I love writing, or at least I used to love writing. You know, I have various hobbies, but I couldn't find a love or a passion for any of those that would motivate me. It could have been, you know, a child or a partner, but at the time I didn't have any of those either. Could even be a pet. I was listening to a really fascinating podcast recently that talks about the relationships that we have with our pets and how simply playing with a pet releases the drug oxytocin, which is sometimes referred to as the love hormone or the cuddle hormone. That is the hormone that makes us feel all warm and soft and squishy when we cuddle with a partner or even when we play with a pet. So if I was going to do this right from scratch, I would, you know, next time I'd go and get a puppy and I'd play with the puppy, but I didn't do that at the time. So I just couldn't find anything that I loved at all. I was devoid. I felt incapable of giving love or having any kind of love, not only for myself but for anything else. But I was struck by this concept of love and how it might help me. So I wondered, maybe if I'm not capable of giving love now, maybe I'm capable of receiving it, or at least maybe I have been capable of receiving love in the past. So I started to look at, okay, this version of Chris that is on the sofa, that is desperate and depressed, doesn't feel loved, doesn't feel capable of giving or receiving love. But maybe there's a version of me that is, or that at least was. And I started to look back through my past, looking for evidence that I was capable of being loved, capable and worthy of being loved. And at the height of my darkness, at the height of my depression, that wasn't easy, but it was doable. At first, just to find a single piece of evidence that I am worthy of love, I had to go all the way back to my childhood. And I looked at my mum singing lullabies to me to help me get to sleep. Singing Two Little Boys, Two Little Toys. I always remember that song. My mum singing that to me to help me sleep because she loved me and she wanted me to sleep peacefully and not be afraid of the dark. I was able to then think of, all the ways that my dad has helped me through my life because he loves me. This opened things up and I was able to look back at past relationships with ex-girlfriends who, okay, the relationship may not have ended brilliantly, but there were times when I have had loving, happy experiences with other human beings, when I have been capable of forming intimate relationships and close connections. Because of that, I was able to see that yes, there is a version of me that is capable and worthy of love. It was at this point that I changed tact a little bit and started to do some visualization. And even though I could feel that other people had love for me, I wasn't exactly sure why that was or why it mattered. So I did some visualization and I put myself into the frame of reference of those people. I imagined being my mum singing lullabies to me. I imagined being my dad helping me. I imagined being ex-girlfriends or friends or people who had done nice things for me out of genuine love for me. And to look at myself through their eyes and think, okay, what is it about me? Why have these people done these things for me or acted in a certain way towards me? What is it about me that inspires some level of love about me? And by doing this and I wrote it down and I spent some time with it. And it was quite painful and quite emotional, but I was able to see a different version of myself and tell myself a different story about being Chris Scoyles that I wasn't able to tell myself in the midst of my darkness. And this became my reason. This became my purpose. I knew now that there was a version of me that was worthy of happiness and that inspired love in people. A version of me that was worthy of doing more with their life than watching Third Rock from the Sun and waiting to die. A version of me that was worthy of having a life. And the more I thought about this version of me, the more I wanted to become that version. So that's what I set out to do. And I set out to do this by letting the version of me that I was currently, the version of me that was on the sofa, depressed and dark, letting that version die. Letting go of that version, letting it die so that I could become this new version of me. Having spoken to some people about this experience, some called it, said that I'd gone through a long dark night of the soul or a spiritual awakening or something like that. But at the time, all I knew it was that I was letting go so that I could basically start over. I'd reached a point in my depression where I wanted to die. And in some ways I did. My physical body remained, and though it was exhausted, it was battered and broken, it could heal and repair. But what was in here and what was in here, those things died and then came to life in a very, very different way. I decided to let go of the old version of me, the version of me that hated myself, the version of me that wanted to die, the version of me that was in darkness. I decided to let go of that and slowly, very slowly but surely, start to embrace this new version of me. I put the emphasis on slowly and surely because it didn't happen all at once. Even when I decided that there was a version of me that could love and that could be happy, I didn't spring off the sofa and go, hurrah, here I am, I'm cured. Still spent days, if not weeks, spending time on the sofa, still sleeping, still resting. But that's how I chose to frame the situation. That's how I chose to tell myself about what was going on, was that I was resting and preparing for this new life that I was about to embark on. I was resting and repairing and getting ready for this new version of me. Very famous YouTuber Ralph Smart, I don't know if any of you watch him, I've heard him talk in the past about how if you break the word depressed down phonetically, you get the words deep rest. And that's how I started to see this experience. I was going through a period of deep rest so that eventually I could emerge on the other side of it. And as I was doing this, as I was going through this deep rest, I was able to start day by day, little by little, taking just chunks of that 200-pound weight off my back so that I could do some of the things that people recommend you do to overcome depression. And the way I looked at it is I started to think, if I'm becoming a new version of Chris, then I'm going to do the things that this new version does that the old version didn't do. So the old version of me that was depressed and that was dying didn't take care of his hygiene. Didn't get off the sofa to go and brush my teeth, shower, shave. So for maybe a couple of days that would be all I would do. And it was just this little victory of going to shave, brushing my teeth, because new version of Chris, happy version, healthy version of Chris takes care of his hygiene. Then it would eventually go to, okay, depressed old version of Chris that is dying wouldn't feed himself very well, would eat junk food, gain weight. Some new version of Chris is going to make one healthy meal and have that little victory of I had one healthy meal. The more I did these things, the more my energy started to grow and I started to get better and better. And then I could set goals and challenges for myself. I could think, do you know what, I'm going to get off this sofa and I'm going to ride my bike for 1,000 miles this year. And it'll eventually get me off the couch for good. And that's what it did. It was a slow, gradual process of dying and being reborn and becoming a new version of myself. Since that time, I have experienced low levels of depression. I know just before Christmas I hit quite a dip, but it's never been quite as bad as that rock bottom. And it's never been quite as bad because I think I know now that even when I go into a period of darkness, a period of low mood, a period of depression, I know that I'm going into that deep rest, and eventually I will emerge. And I look at these periods as getting myself ready for the next big challenge, the next big obstacle, the next big transformation in my life. Told you that was going to be a bit fluffy and a bit emotional, didn't I? It wasn't quite hey, go and do this thing and your depression will be fine. But I wanted to share this part of my journey with you because even though it is kind of fluffy, it's still my truth, and it's still, you know, an important part of my experience. I share many things, and I try and share things that I think will help other people. But sometimes I want you to know where I'm coming from and why I'm saying the things that I'm saying to you, because these are the things that I've learned along my journey. And I hope that something I've shared today has resonated with you in some way. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. There are millions of videos on YouTube, and you've taken a few minutes out of your day to watch this one. I am genuinely grateful. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, as I say, I talk about depression and mental health, but also quitting smoking and addiction. If you think that might be helpful for you, please do check out my channel and consider subscribing. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Chris Scoyles for lots of bonus videos and downloads and other content. In fact, as soon as I've done this, I'm going to go and record some new stuff for my wonderful Patreon supporters. Thank you again for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.